and it is a best paper awardee. So the paper is entitled Role of Peer Influence in Churn in Wireless Networks.
Thank you. Hi, good morning. My name is Qiwei, and it's my pleasure to be back in Beijing. And I'd like again to thank the program committee that recognized us as best paper last night, and it was a wonderful night. And I'm currently jointly with iLab at Carnegie Mellon in Pittsburgh and the University of Lisbon in Portugal. And we at iLab Carnegie Mellon, one of the major research focus in our group is that we want to understand the social influence in different network contexts. And some of the previous work has appeared in journals such as Miss Quarterly and Management Science, and conferences, ICIS, and Social Com as well. So today I would like to present you this paper titled Role of Peer Influence in Churn in Wireless Network. So first I would like to introduce you what churn is and why it is a problem. Second, I would like to give you a brief description of our dataset that we obtained from a major European wireless carrier. And third, we will present you two methodologies that we use to evaluate the effect of churn. And lastly, we will give you some conclusions and implications from our results. So as far as we look back the past decades of the wireless industry, we will see that according to the ITU data that in the past 10 years, the wireless industry has become so high penetration, and it actually leads to the market saturation. So it means that there is no room for wireless carriers that to acquire the new customers without any previous experience with the mobile subscription. And on the other hand, the deregulation in the wireless industry opened up the market to multiple entry carriers. So you will see more than 2 carriers in each country mostly. So for example, in China, you will have China Mobile, Unicom, and Telecom, and so on. So it has some implication. First, on the wireless carrier side, the competition increases, and it becomes very fierce. So, but on the user side, the switching cost becomes reduces, and so that the user can easily switch from one provider to the other one. Therefore, the effective customer relationship management will become a priority for any wireless carriers in order to ensure their company's sustainable growth. There are 2 issues here. One is to acquire the customer, and the other one is to retain the customer. However, it is reported that acquiring one customer is at least 5 times harder than retaining one customer. So what is churn? So the churn rate is normally used in wireless industry that measures the proportion of the subscribers that discontinue their service during a certain period of time. Okay? And as reported by the wireless carrier over the world, the average monthly churn rate varies between 1.5% to 5% and so on. So it can directly translate to 20% subscriber loss each year at least. And also it can even translate to billions of dollars in loss to the wireless carriers. And according to the report by the FCC, that as long as the wireless carriers can cut their churn by just 1/5, it will increase the operating income by over 5% to 15%. Okay. However, this complexity of the churn poses challenges to the wireless carrier as there is no single solution that can prevent all churn. According to the FCC report that issued in 2009, they consider the churn as the biggest issue for all the wireless carriers. So all the wireless carrier wants to use this churn management framework that to evaluate the churn, their strategy of churn prevention. We just framed out this 4 steps into 4 questions: who, why, when, and how. So first, the wireless carrier wants to identify who are the potential churners. Second, they want to evaluate the underlying reasons why they want to churn. Maybe they are unsatisfied with the service they provided, or there is some competition. Let's say another provider provides a huge campaign promotion that attracts more subscribers to the other provider, or there are some carriers that provide a novel handset or service that is currently not available with the current existing carrier. For example, like exclusive contract with iPhone with AT&T at first. And thirdly, they want to devise appropriate strategies to prevent churn. So there are several strategies such as targeted marketing or special offers to the people who they believe is going to churn. And lastly, they want to implement a strategy and measure impact and improve this strategy. Okay. So here we want to focus on the second step. Why? We want to understand why the subscriber want to churn, and we want to evaluate from the perspective of the peer influence. So the related works on churn analysis actually is prevalent, as you will see. First, some marketing researchers propose this called this customer lifetime value model, or the CLV model. It means that they model the profit of the carrier as a function of the total customer CLV, where CLV is the future cash flow the wireless carrier can expect from those subscribers. And the churn normally in these models are treated as a parameter that can be very sensitive to the CLV, the future CLV. And from the machine learning perspective, normally they just want to use the big data that they have and to predict who is the churners. So this is a classical binary classification problem. Why is churn and zero is not churn? There are many machine learning techniques have been used to estimate the churn probability. But however, there are several issues that need to be concerned. First, the performance of these algorithms are very sensitive to the data that they have used. Second, they do not explain the micro mechanism that yield the churn, so basically do not answer the question why. And thirdly, this traditional statistically based benchmarking performance does not actually give you the profit maximization solution. Okay. So it's very critical to understand why the users want to churn. And from the other side of the social network analysis, the researchers want to understand why the subscriber churn depending on the number of friends who have churned in the last time period. So as you see on the figure on the right, at any given time period T, you will have a subscriber is surrounded with his friends. Okay, and at that time, let's say two friends have just churned. So in the next time period, this subscriber will be very likely to churn because of his friend have just churned in the last time period. Okay, and some researchers have tried to use these social factors and try to put them into the machine learning model, actually increase the prediction performance. However, there are still some challenges in the peer influence identification. So the correlation in the behavior among the people that they are linked to each other can be explained by many factors, not only the peer influence, as we know. So first, let's say if it's a peer influence, as you see on the right on this figure, the contagion in the outcome actually is spreading over the social links in the next time period. However, it can be explained by other factors such as homophily, which means that there are some latent features, let's say this big A and big B, that both drive their social links and also their outcomes in the next time period. There are also some other factors such as common external shocks, which means that maybe there is some other external factor that will trigger the entire churn outcome. So if you misattribute the homophily to peer influence or vice versa, you may very well lead to the overestimate the other one. Okay, so we have this data set from a major European telecom operator, and we call it Euromol. And it's a very large data set. It has 2.5 terabytes stored in Ireland and Carnegie Mellon. And we have normally 5 million anonymous customers, about 10 months. And we use only the prepaid users because their usage are more irregular than the postpaid users. Okay, and these are all raw call detail records. As you may know that this data set is actually from 2008. Well before the big data era awareness. Okay, so the data actually is very messy. There are a lot of duplicates, a lot of measurement errors, and so on. And we did a lot of effort in order to clean it and use it for our analytics. So first we aggregate for each subscriber at monthly level because it makes sense as these call detail records is used for billing purpose. Okay. And second, we calculate the number of calls, airtime, both in terms of incoming and outgoing, and also the inside and outside network. And then we calculate the ratio of the outside calls and airtimes. By combining the tariff plan information that we have, we can approximate the monthly expenditure for each subscriber. And since we know when do they join this network, so we can also count how long does they stay in the network. So we call it tenure here. Because this is the identification work, not a prediction work, so we do a random sample. So we believe this random sample is representative enough because we have already extracted 10,000 subscribers, and then we remove those subscribers we believe to be the PBX machines or the sales representatives. Okay, and all these subscribers have prepaid plans. They have at least one call, and because they are prepaid users, so we have no demographic information, and we do not actually know when they churn because they can just simply throw their SIM card and never come back. So following the industry standard, we assume that the subscriber churns if she plays no calls for at least 3 consecutive months. Then we use these call detail records to construct our social networks as the call graph. So 2 subscribers are called friends if they exchange at least 1 call in the same calendar month. So this actually ensures the mutual relationship between the ego and friends. Otherwise, if you have a subscriber as a sales representative, he may make a lot of calls, will never get incoming calls. We're just trying to remove this influence. And during the 10 months, there were like 1,200 churners in total, which can translate to 2% monthly churn rate. Okay, and then we performed a 2-sample t-test, and we showed that churners are actually statistically different from the non-churners across all variables that we just saw. And it actually has the implication that the churners may be inherently more prone to churn because they maybe have less experience with the subscriber, they may be less loyalty with the carrier, and so on. So we want to remove all these effects. So firstly, since we consider our data as the time-to-event data, so it's very natural for us to perform the survival analysis. The survival analysis assumes that the people who stay in the network during these 10 months as the people who actually survive. Okay. But we still want control for some unobserved individual level heterogeneity. So we propose this pH proportional hazard model, but we introduce this frailty term. So as you see here, on the left side, you will have the churn hazard for any subscriber at given time t. Okay, and this alpha measures the gamma distributed frailty term. Each node is just a non-parametric baseline hazard function there. I mean, this is a very basic pH survival function. And we use both the time varying and time independent covariates that we just described. So here, the dependent variable is basically the dummy variable of churn at month t, and the explanatory variable including number of calls and airtime, and their square terms, expenditures, number of friends, monthly dummies, and more importantly, the variable that we are particularly interested in, the n call number of friends who churn at the last time period. This n represents varies between 1, 3, 5. It means that the friends who at least exchange 1 call, 3 call, 5 calls with the ego in the last time period. This is a proxy of the tie strength that we use to measure the weak, medium, and strong ties. Okay. So we include all these covariates in the pH model and characterize the subscriber behavior, and we found the statistically significant and positive effect of the number of friends who churn in the last time period. In order to give you a visually appealing result, we run a Monte Carlo simulation using the estimated coefficient and variance of this friend churn to derive the relative hazard of churn compared to having no friend who churn in the last month. So the coefficient for the friend who churned are statistically significant across all model specifications that we used. And you can see from here that the more friends churn, the more likely the ego will churn. Okay? And we can see that uncertainty for the number of 5 called friends who churn is actually very high because it is a rare event. So that we have a very high variance there. But what we got here is merely a correlation. Okay? So we have only, say, the more likely to churn for ego to churn because they have more friends to churn. Now we want to see a more confident result on causal effect of the churn. So secondly, we use this generalized propensity score to estimate the peer influence. So the propensity score matching is a very widely applied method to evaluate the effect of treatment on outcome of interest with it's in the observational studies. It has been widely used in the econometrics, in the bioinformatics, and so on. And the basic idea is that if we condition on the propensity score, which is the universal score that we define the similarity between the subscribers, the selection bias, the homomorphy, in other words, will be reduced because the pairs of treated units and untreated units will become ever more similar. Okay. However, the propensity score matching only allows for the binary treatment. For example, like another paper by the professor from MIT, they tried to analyze the effect of a friend's adoption of an online service on ego's adoption by comparing the user with larger than 2 friends adopted compared with smaller than 2 friend adopters. Okay, so there was some effect that are eaten because of the limitation of the traditional propensity score matching. Therefore, we try to extend the propensity score matching to cases with the continuous treatment, as you see here as generalized propensity score. It provides a dose-response function, ERF, that measures the outcome of interest, here, ego's churn, with the intensity of the treatment, T, here, the number of the friends who churn, conditional on the GPS, R. So basically, the expected value of the ego's churn is just a function of the number of friends who churn and the GPS. Similar to the epidemiological cases, we want to use the exposure to the friend churn. You have induction and latency period. Therefore, we divided our observational period into 2 intervals. In the first intervals, we call it a treatment exposure period, and in the second interval, we call it post-treatment period. So in the TEP, we will count the ego's friend churn, while in the PTP, we will just simply see whether this ego churns or not. And we want the TEP and PTP be sufficiently large and balanced in order to observe different level of the treatment and outcomes. So since we have 10 months data and we use 3 months ahead, so we have only 7 months in total, and we divide it into 2 scenarios. TEP, for example, the first one, 1, 2, 3, 4, and the PEP is just the rest of the 3 months. And we will only report the results with the first scenario, while the results we got from the second scenario are qualitatively similar. So the treatment intensity here is not normally distributed, as you know that none of friend who churn. It's basically not normal distributed variables. So we try to categorize the treatment intensity into 3 levels. T1, which is the at most 1 friend who churns. T2, 2 or 3 friend churns. And T3 is more than 3 friends who churn. So that we can use the generalized linear models and relax this normal distribution assumption. Okay. And then we use 5 essential covariates that are highly relevant to the subscriber cell usage and choice of carriers, such as number of calls, expenditures, number of friends, and percentage of the call to other networks, and the tenure, as we observed. Then we test whether, if we conditional on the mean given the GPS, are different for subscriber with each treatment intensity and with subscriber in other intervals. And as you see from the table on the right, that before the adjustment on the GPS, they are basically the churners and the non-churners are basically systematically different However, after we adjust on the GPS, this selection bias has been reduced significantly, so that they are now statistically significant, at least at 5% level. Okay, so basically we can have more confidence to say that we effectively reduce the selection bias, though we cannot totally eliminate it because there are still many other factors that we cannot observe. So this is our result. We estimate the DRF and marginal effect relative to having no friends that churn. So as you see here, with more number of friends that churn, it will increase the likelihood of churn for any uncalled friend churn that we have used here. Okay, and the marginal effect of this additional friend churning is at best 10%. While comparing with the result that we obtained from the saliva analysis, we see that although even though we control for the homophily, we still see the evidence of the if a contagious churn after we control for this selection bias. So we see here the GPS reduces the bias in estimating the effect of peer influence by comparing across similar subscribers. So just to give you a summary, that we try to examine the effect of peer influence on churn while acknowledging the confounding factors such as homophily. And we use some important covariates from a real-world data set of a cell phone activity, and we feed the survival analysis to correlate the cumulative number of friends that churn in the previous months to the eagle's churn hazard. And then we provide this generalized propensity score method to evaluate the effect of number of friends to churn on eagle's churn. And we found evidence of churn even after we are controlling for the homophily. So I would just point out the last thing. Our methodology, we believe it can be also used in other network contexts. For example, if you want to learn the word of mouth effect in other settings, for example, you want to learn whether the people's likelihood of adoption iPhones depends on the number of friends who just adopted iPhone in the previous time period. Our method is a generalized framework that we can use basically into any other network influence identification work. Okay. And lastly, there is implication big data to the big data application, because I believe this conference is co-located with big data science. So in a recent talk by the Howard Baring in the American Economic Association's annual meeting, he said that, and I paraphrase here, that if you want to evaluate the impact analysis to assist the decision-making process, it requires such a causal set thinking. Okay, no matter how big your data is, you should have measured the effect under the causal analysis instead of just merely provide a correlation. And that's it. Thank you.
Any questions for our speaker? Anybody? Go ahead.
What about the application? So you now have all this, results. So what do you think? What do you think out of this? So can you then figure out? Can now the cell phone company can know this particular person and try to do something to make that person, come back? Or what's the application of this work?
Yes. So though I didn't see here, but we wrote it in the paper that we believe that the churn management, in this case, can focus on the group churn instead of the churn on individual level basis. Right? So, for example, if I know a subscriber with a lot of friends, and I know he's going to churn, I should focus on him. Because if he churns, there will be a much larger influence than the others with smaller social circles.
So it means that you can now go ahead and give that group of people maybe some type of a discount or some type of thing to make them continue to use the service or something like that. Right?
That's true. Yeah. That's true.
Thank you. Any other questions? Not as technical speaker?